Oh, I love do-overs.
Good morning, Troy love. How are you?
Good morning. I am well. Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here with you today.
Somebody put in, you can always count on Troy to help your personal growth.
Yes, I'm no fun at parties.
Actually, I bet you're a delight. But
Oh, thank you.
so one of the things I'm going to share is that Troy does the Friday morning drop-in group for men and talks about attachment wounds. And we've now added, Troy has added to his busy calendar alternating Thursdays, he's on for partners and addressing the wounds of partners. Because I mean, betrayal wounds, abandonment wounds. I mean, yeah, all of the wounds that come up. So having a format just for or forum just for betrayed partners, I think is a real gift as well. But today, we are here for you. Please put your questions in the Q&A for Troy on attachment wounds, but on really, anything. He has been working in the field for quite a while and addresses uh, the relationship wounds that happen with betrayal and addiction and all those fun things.
I just got an email from somebody saying, "Oh, thank you so much. Your wisdom is so nice to hear from such a young person." And I'm like, "Well, I'm nearly 50, but thank you so much for thank you for calling me young. I really appreciate
That made your day,
it."
didn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
I was so excited.
Yeah.
Oh.
Somebody was talking about 50 something and I was like they were talking and I was like, been there, done that, so far beyond that. So
Oh my
I
gosh.
remember it, but
Right? I used to
yeah,
think 50 was so old, and now I'm like, man, that's not very old. So,
exactly. I had an interesting call from somebody who was, of a certain age and he was desperately concerned that he could change at this age. And I was like, yes, I have hope. I mean, I really believe that we are always given today to do things differently and that we can address the wounds of our past in a different way. We have to understand what they are on some level, stop the behavior, but address the wounds so that we can move forward differently. But I am mostly hopeful. I mean, I see addicts who absolutely dig in their heels and refuse to do anything, and that's just sad to me. I mean, truly, I have cried, when there have been certain people that have reached out, and I just, I go, wow, it's so dug into their I'm not going to change, and that's sad. But
mhm,
but otherwise, I'm hopeful because I know many of us who have had uh, the ability to change. Thank
right.
goodness.
Thank goodness for that. Yeah.
The first question: how do you express anger and disinterest regarding a partner's acting out when his attachment is dismissive avoidant? Whenever I question or show intense emotion, he shuts down and we go back to square one. Time to give up and let go? This is my thought.
That is such a good question. So, and it's such a challenging one because when I'm working with the addicts, and we often, I mean, the rule that we often are encouraging the addicts to follow is to disclose to their partners within 24 hours of a slip or a relapse. And that's really hard. I get that it's really hard for them to do that. But we want to honor the betrayed partner and not let the lie continue for so many different reasons. We just know that when the lie continues, it can perpetuate the behavior and it perpetuates the betrayal and all of those kind of things. So the individual finally gets up the courage to tell their partner, and I think kind of expects that their partner is going to be really happy that you told them, like, and give you a gold star on your forehead for telling you the truth. But you're not. You're like, I mean, I think you're probably happy that they told you without you having to like ask 5,000 questions with a light in their eyes and turn the dark room on, do the whole interrogation thing. They finally were able to do that, but it still hurts. It still hurt. It hits the betrayal wound. And so I'm trying to help the addict, the individual struggling with addiction, say like, if you want a gold star, you got to go tell your people in your 12-step group or your people in your recovery support group. They're the ones who are going to celebrate for you. They're the one who's going to give you the, that. But you can't expect your partner to do that because your partner's wounded too. And that becomes the little dance that the partner and the well, both partners are getting into. And Sue Johnson's work about the loop plays a really big role in that, where your partner is rubbing up against your betrayal wound, and then you have a reaction, which is understandable. Just like if somebody hits your sunburn, you're going to have a reaction. You might get angry or you might feel pain. And so, as you are expressing that pain, that bumps up against his wounds. Maybe, I don't know your partner, but I'm guessing there's some rejection or abandonment that happens, and then he then like pulls away, and then when he pulls away, that stirs up some of your wounds, and then around and around the cycle you go. And so part of that is recognizing that is the pattern, and what we're really dealing with is not the fact that he acted out. That's not really what this is about. This is about you have some deep wounds and he has some deep wounds, and that you two continue to bump up against them. And how can we like have conversations about that and create some safety so we actually can come together and experience some healing in that. And that may be hard to do without having somebody who is a therapist who can help work through some of that with you and your partner to do that. But that's what happens. What you've identified is that that's the pattern, and then he shuts down and pulls away, which leaves you absolutely alone. And I can hear kind of the frustration of, is it time to give up and let go? Because that anxious or that dismissive avoidant attachment style that he has been using for long before he ever met you, is how he deals with his own pain. And I can't tell you whether it's time to give up and let go. I can just identify that that is the pattern that has happened for a really, really long time. And rather than focusing on the behaviors themselves, taking a look at the pattern and how can we break that pattern apart? What has that pattern been about? And what's your role in the pattern? What's his role in the pattern? Not in a way of blaming or trying to shame, but just saying like we can map this sucker out, and we can figure it out. That helps give some clarity of, okay, this is what happens when I do this. This is what happens when you do that. And that might give some clarity. Then you can decide whether or not you want to do anything about the pattern. Can you change the pattern? I absolutely believe that patterns can be changed, but it's not until we actually see the pattern that we can actually change it. So,
And I agree with that because it is a dance and you're following the same dance move. So if you do a different step, then that starts to shift things. You righteous anger, 100% understand that. But what I hear is when I express anger, so when there's the intense emotion, he shuts down. So I'm wondering if there's an opportunity, can you express that intense emotion with other betrayed partners, where you get the support for that. So when you come back to the situation, you've diffused the intense, and you're able to have the conversation. I've often shared that having the set time that every at Tuesday at 7 p.m. We're going to talk for 20 minutes and we're going to have the conversation, and this is the safe space to do this, and we know that it's for a finite period of time. And and the other thing that has been incredibly useful for me is, rather than the just charging ahead, being curious. Troy, I'm curious, what led you to that behavior? Oh, shoot, sorry. Uh, so if I can get out of myself and back up and just go, okay, tell me what was going on before that, that changes things, because then I'm in a curious and I'm not just in a reactive mode, and that takes a lot of work. But if I'm looking to do things differently, that is my opportunities. I do things differently I can't change somebody else, but I can do something different. I can change my actions and my reactions. I can get support to hold me through my reactions by people who understand. So, like Troy was saying, getting the yay, you're doing so good, but from your sponsor and support group, great, not from your partner. So as for when it's time to leave, I do I sub in on the betrayed partner groups now and then, and I'm so appreciative of the support and wisdom that they have for each other. But I hear consistently, when at some point, today is like it is time to leave, or you start to see that this person is changing and you go, I'm going to hang in there. I'm just going to see where this goes. But I think if the decision is made to leave, when Next question, does the addict leaving his family during relapse cause an attachment wound for the partner? Would you say it's abusive to continually threaten to leave again during arguments?
So I don't know if it causes an attachment wound or if it reopens an attachment wound, but the attachment wound is abandonment. Abandonment is the attachment wound when somebody leaves and there's no explanation as to why they're gone. There's no closure. There's no, hey, I'll be back later. So what that does for the others is it leaves them without any clarity as to what in the world is going on, which leaves open to all kinds of fear and possibilities of bad things. Like we don't know. We don't know why they're leaving. We don't know what's going on with them. We don't know if they're going to be okay. We don't know if it's because of me. We don't know if I'm a bad person. Like it causes a lot of unknown around all of that. And so that wound may have existed before you ever met your partner, and that this partner just seems to uh, keep bringing it up, which does happen in a lot of situations. I don't know how that works, but we tend to find the one person in the universe that is going to help us face that one wound that we had to deal with when we were kids. And sometimes this is a brand new wound that you've never experienced before. So whether or not it created it, I just want to honor that that is a thing that is happening. And I'm sure that it creates a lot of fear for you. And then you're asking whether it's abusive to continually threaten to leave again during the argument. That can definitely stir up that abuse wound, because what abuse does is it's the way that I define abuse is I'm inflicting my woundedness on somebody else. I'm wounded and I'm inflicting my wounds on somebody else. It's causing them harm. The other wounds, when those are happening, those like abuse incorporates all the other wounds. Like it's all of them when you put them up there. So it it is hurtful, and it definitely is rubbing up against that abusive wound. They are probably doing it because they feel their own sense of powerlessness. I'm not trying to excuse their behavior. That's where, when we really are able to have our own boundaries, and we're able to come to our own place of like, I can't, like, if that's what you're going to do, that's not something that I can continue to tolerate anymore. The thing that Stephen Stosny, if you're familiar with his work, he does a lot around boundaries, and he says it's a very strange situation because lots and lots of therapists try to teach their clients about how to do boundaries. And he says, but the thing that's missing is that when I don't believe that I'm worthy of love and belonging, then I can use the words, hey, you can't do that to me. I can practice those things, but it actually doesn't have a whole lot of teeth to it until I actually believe that I really am worthy of love and belonging. When I connect with my core value, when I really do that, there's a light and a power inside of me that the other person almost senses, and they no longer can use that as almost a manipulative tool anymore. You'll see this like when a kid who's been physically abused by their dad and finally punches their dad back. They've gotten big enough and strong enough. They're able to punch their dad back. Their dad is like, oh, you are big enough. I can't hurt you anymore. It stops. And that's kind of the same principle. When you're able to step into your power, that I'm enough and I am okay, you need to go work on whatever it is that you need to work on. Then that doesn't have to happen anymore. I'm only getting like 3 sentences of your situation, but I guess what I'm wanting you to understand is that you are worthy of love and belonging. You matter. These wounds hurt. They're painful. I don't want to minimize them, and I want you to find a way to go do some wound care for yourself and care for them, because you need to do that. You can't wait around for that other person to show up and take care of your wounds, because they may not have the capacity or ability to do that right now. But you go take care of those wounds so you can be in a place of like, this isn't going to happen to me anymore. I'm not going to let it happen anymore.
Yeah, and I feel for you with that, but I can't help but think of the, the bully that gets the reaction, like I'm going to do this because I'm going to get a reaction, and so you finding the space for healthy boundaries for you. I suspect like I said a little bit ago, all I can control is my actions and reactions. I can't control anybody else, but I'm sorry and sad that he is in his active addiction, because he's missing out on all the good stuff in life. So I hope, I hope he or she, I guess I shouldn't, but I hope they find, recovery. It's so worth it. Okay, next question. My wife and I, this is from the addict. I've been married for 38 years. Husband acted out in many ways for a good share of these years. I have disclosed a number of times. Over the past 4 years, dribbled verbally. She is asking for a list in writing. Oh, please, please, please don't. Okay.
Breathe.
I know. She is asking for a list in writing. Is there a better way to present the list, with a therapist alone, or
Yes, there is a better
yes.
way. Okay.
Yes.
I'll tell you
You've chosen the worst way, so let's go to how better to do this.
Yes, I'll tell you the worst way. I was teaching how to do full disclosure in this class and how the importance of it. And as I'm doing that, one of the individuals writes a list of all the things that he's done and then slides it over to his wife, and she gets the list. And
oh my gosh,
there was no container of safety. I watched her face like go, bleh, and she's like, what just happened? I'm like, so don't do it that way. That's not a way to do it. The little dribblings is actually death by 1,000 paper cuts. So yes, there is a way to do it. Preferably, if you could find a CSAT in your area, they've been trained on how to do full disclosure. Full disclosure, I'm not a CSAT, but I understand the process of how full disclosure works, and I understand that there's a right way and a wrong way to do that. So,
formal disclosure, a full but formal, therapeutic. Hear the word therapeutic in there. There's a reason,
right? So how that really works is that you're working with the therapist, and preferably your partner is also having a therapist as well,
for support.
Because this is betrayal trauma. So being able to have her have some space to be able to contain and hear what it is that you're going to share. Even if you don't think it's that big of a deal. Like, I can't tell you how many full disclosures that I have sat through, and the things that I thought were going to be a big deal actually weren't that big of a deal for the partner, but some little teeny thing that was a really big deal for them. Like, wow, that's interesting. I didn't understand that would be a big deal. So how it works is that you work with your CSAT or your therapist who's been trained to do these full disclosures, and you're going to write it out, everything that you've done from the time you were a little kid, before you ever met your wife. Um, and in that process, I'm not going to give you the whole thing, but in the process, you're also asking her like, what are some of the questions that you want to know, and you're going to take some time. I tell people it takes several months to work on this. You reassure your partner, I'm working on this, because they really do want to know. They want to know, like, how bad is this? Like, like, do I need to, like, what do I need to do? Do I need to go get it tested for STDs? Like, do I need to go find a, like, are you leaving me tomorrow? They're scared, legitimately scared. So the beauty of doing a formal full disclosure is I've seen that turn relationships around, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's one of the hardest things that both you and your partner will ever have to go through. But what it does is, number one, it rips the band-aid all off at once. There's not a little bit here and a little bit there. She's able to hear all of the information. She's able to have support. She's able to have some time to ponder and think about, now that I have all that information, what do I want to do with it? She's then able to share with you the impact that what this has had on her. She's able to write an impact letter for you. She's able to share all of that. And then together, you guys are able to make a plan of what goes forward. What often happens with us as we are keeping secrets, as there's a part of us that says, well, you love me, but would you love me if you knew this? And you love me, but would you know if you knew this? And but I'm going to keep this till I die. But that actually continues to keep the separation. There is a disconnection, and your spouse can figure that out. She can figure out there's something not right, and she'll ask and we'll lie and we'll lie, and she's like, no, I can, like, there's the sixth sense about it. So full disclosure helps put it all on the table, and then it's done. So go find a qualified therapist in your area, preferably a CSAT who knows how to do this, who's been trained. That's what I would recommend. And don't lie. I can't tell. I've had several of these full disclosures where they did not tell everything. And then it came out, and it always will, man. It always will come out. So don't lie. Put it all out. It's super scary. Wrap yourself up with some support and let some guys love on you. Um, but that's how you do it. I would not do it alone with just her, because you both need safety. You both need some support. You both need people to help you walk through this, because it can be one of the most damaging, hard, horrible things that could happen in your relationship, or it can be one of the most healing things that can happen in your relationship. It just needs to be done in the right way.
I so agree. So basically, what you've done is, without the benefit of somebody who knows how to do this, you've been telling her stuff, and you've been probably filtering it, but you've also told her details. Like in a formal disclosure, it's data, but there's no emotion. I'm so sorry I did this to you. I mean, like, none of that stuff. It's data. It's like, I had unprotected sex X amount of times. I spent this much money. It's information. And if it's like, yeah, when I said I was going to that conference for work, and I'm like, there can be some specific things, but this is not a 20-page. This is data. 92% of formal disclosures, therapeutic disclosures, have there was a study done. 92% of the respondents said that they were glad that they had done it, and it started a foundation, of healing on which to build. That's the point of doing a disclosure, is to build on that foundation. The 8% would be like Troy says, when somebody's lying. I just had one last week where somebody completely lied, withheld things. It went really badly. And don't be part of the 8%. Be part of the 92%. Get help. But absolutely, how they have these disclaimers on certain things. Don't try this, on your own, or try this at home. Disclosure is one of those, and partners, just like Troy was saying, they want to know, and they'll keep, going, I need to know. And so often the addicts will relent, and unfortunately, you put the partner in a position of being even a deeper hole of trauma to dig out of. So holding the space, I know you want to know this. I want to give you the information. I want to do it in a way that's going to be meaningful and helpful for both of us. And so, I'm gonna hold that line, and I'm gonna do my work to prepare for this so that we can, move forward. I don't want to hurt you more, but I'm going to be honest with you in my disclosure. That's meaningful, and can help hold that space. But both of you working with a qualified professional, ideally partners working with a pro-dependent aligned support person, but just holding the space for that it's challenging, but you've been through a lot of challenges. This is a finite period of time, but the rewards are so worth it. So
Does sexandrelationshiphealing.com have a link to find therapists in?
No. Well, so you can always go to the iitap.com to find a CSAT. That said, there are some of them I absolutely refer to, I would go to, and there are some that have the letters that I don't. So I often get asked for recommendations. There are some CSATs that don't do disclosure. So Dr. Rob does a peer consultation group for professionals. Like it's every Tuesday. It's free, and it's an opportunity for I love the therapists that come to that because they really care about their clients. Do you know what the number one topic is? Disclosure. Disclosure is such a challenging thing for therapists, so like I said, doing this at home is just not a good choice. So but not every therapist, even trained the CSATs, don't all do disclosure, because it is something that you either engage with or you don't. And so but okay, so next question. Hi Troy, how do I deal with being shunned by my adult? Oh shoot. Yeah, this is just, it's been a crazy morning with phone calls already. Okay. Hi, Troy. How do I deal with being shunned by my adult daughters who are Jehovah's Witnesses? As I left the cult 20 years ago, they are being trained to shun anybody who leaves the religion for any reason, even legitimate. These attachment wounds have affected my sense of loneliness, and I've acted out in my marriage having an affair with a massage therapist. I've expressed remorse over this for my wife, for how I hurt her, though she deals with attachment wounds from emotional abuse by her parents when she was young. We are working hard to heal. Please, any further suggestions? We are both getting counseling, and I attend 4 support groups for men each week. Any help is appreciated. Oh, thank you for reaching out and sharing that.
That is really tough, man. So there's some wounds of abandonment and rejection and betrayal. Like all 3 of those wounds right there are being hit. And I often say, you've heard me say, that it is often not the bad thing that is happening to us, but what we've ended up believing about ourselves and the world as a result that's causing the pain. And so, as you're expressing, there's a lot of sadness around that. There's sadness because of the loss of losing your daughters and not being able to have the connection with her. I'm hearing that there's pain about the way that you've acted out, as a way of maybe trying to deal with some of that pain with your your wife, and you've expressed remorse for that. You guys are working hard. I know who you are. I know how hard you're working on that, man. But what I'm hearing is that there's a lot of pain about the rejection of being shunned by your adult daughters because they continue to belong to a church that you no longer belong to. You don't share their faith, and understanding that particular faith does have some strong belief systems around therapy and other religions and holidays and those kind of things. That is something that is fairly strong, and there is definitely a disconnection with your ability to connect. And so I don't want to minimize that feeling of rejection for you. if you were doing a finding peace worksheet with me, one of the things that I would be exploring with you are what are the core beliefs that are coming up for you? What are the core beliefs about your own identity? What are the core beliefs about their identity? What are the core beliefs about safety and trust? I can't depend on, I can't rely on. What are some of the core beliefs about powerlessness? And to be honest, some of those core beliefs may be true. There may be some sense of I can't connect with my daughters because of blah, blah, blah. But we take a look at those core beliefs, and then we take a look at how does the shame amplify those core beliefs? What do those core beliefs do? And then trying to find a place of truth. What is actually true? What's true about me? What's true about my daughters? What's true about my love for them? What's true about the situation? What's true about my power? What's true about the things that I can choose to do? They may or may not ever come around, but what can I do? And we often get stuck in this place of, well, there's nothing that I can do. And that is really a painful, painful place. I can't give you any answers of what that would look like, but just asking the questions and sitting with it and letting the universe, your higher power, whatever that looks like for you, connect with what truths are there for you. I'm hoping that that will help you find a sense of peace and to find a way to be able to continue to feel a connection with your daughters, even if they are not in a place where they can connect with you. Don't have an easy answer for you with that, but hopefully that might be helpful. And just even writing down, like I've shared before in these webinars, writing down and taking a look at what some of those core beliefs are, pulling out a finding peace worksheet. You know where to find them. They're on the Thursday and Friday, right under the meeting link. For the Thursday and Friday links, there's a link to the finding peace PDF worksheet. You can print one out and use that and walk it through and see if you can come to a greater sense of peace for yourself.
And I had this thought about, if you wrote a letter to each of your daughters, and you don't send it because I don't think they can receive it. But if you just wrote that, what would you express, to them? And just because someone is taken away from us, and this happens with death as well, but it's just because someone is taken away from us doesn't mean that we don't still love and care about them. How can you yeah, there are people in my life that have chosen not to be, well, they aren't in my life, or they're on the fringes of my life or whatever, and that's fine. That doesn't mean I don't hold the space for them. But I just understand that that's just how things are. So how can I care about them, hope good things for them, etc. We've got no control over anybody else. I said it earlier. All I can do is control my actions and reactions. Destructive behaviors, that come out of those wounds, I'm so glad you're working, on repairing with your wife. That's a current relationship, and making that a healthy attachment, healthy connection, is so important. But I mean, I hear often from people who are in religious communities or certain familial, cultural, that when they leave or when they shift, it is not welcomed. And so it is always painful. And to choose to live your integrity in a different way rather than just following what you were raised with, is a painful. I mean, it's breaking. Not everybody's brave enough to do that. So I honor that you were, and I honor the hard work you're doing, but it still has pain. Other questions? We've got some time.
Well,
I was
wow.
thinking about those. Go ahead. I was thinking about those religious wounds though, because I mean, that's kind of a chronic situation.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who've experienced all six of those wounds from a religious perspective. rejection, abandonment, betrayal, abuse from a religious perspective, you know.
Hmm.
I know that you did a webinar with Matt a couple of weeks ago talking about internal shame versus external shame, and I wanted to speak to that a little bit about how the shadows of shame do that as well. It's
Please.
it's interesting because if you guys are familiar with the shadows of shame, there's 6 of them: the judge, the rebel, the impotent one, the royal, the politician, and the martyr. A lot of times when they're talking, they speak internally, meaning that they are always telling me that there's something wrong with me, that I'm flawed, that I'm powerless. But they can be sneaky, and Matt, when he introduced me to the concept of external shame, it's a really fascinating form of shame. And what they do is they tell you what other people are thinking about you. So you the I met a person who said that they really actually feel like they are a good person, that they really do feel like they're a good person, but they really believe that everybody else thinks that they are a horrible person. And so it's like the judge is not telling that person that they are horrible. The judge is saying, well, that person over there thinks that you're horrible, and so this is what you need to do to try and make that person happy with you. The politician shows up and says, well, this is what you need to do to make that person like you. The martyr says, well, this is what you need to do to try and take care of that person, make sure that that person is taken care of. The royal will show up and say, well, this is what you need to do because you think you're better than them. It's a little bit of a different it's a different way of looking at it. And the way that manifests is that I end up judging other people. So if I'm noticing like that I'm judging other people, or I'm putting other people down, or I'm making criticisms, or I'm I'm saying some unkind things about other people, that is my external shame that showed up. And if I really take a look at it, I honestly believe that the internal shame is playing a huge role, but I might not be aware of that very much because that's that transference defense mechanism where I'm seeing in somebody else the part of myself that I don't like, that I don't really want to look at. But I can see it so clearly in that other person. So I'm going to judge them, and I'm going to think about what they can do to be a perfect parent. I used to do that. I was the perfect parent before I had children. Like was so, I just knew like how horrible these parents were and what they needed to do better. And then I had kids, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I did not know what in the heck I was talking about. So I realized now, it's like, whoa, like that was external shame right there. Me, royal, thinking I knew so much better than them at the time, and therefore projecting, judging them, and then realizing that wasn't true. Like they were doing the best they knew how to do. I had no room to speak because I'm not in their shoes. I don't have their children. I don't know what their challenges are. I get to have my own children. They have their own challenges. I get to figure out how to be a parent to them. And man, my shadows can show up around that all the time. But recognizing that these shadows can, for a lot of time, they can beat us up, but they can also beat up the people around us. And that's not something that I explore very much because usually we're trying to work on our own things. But just to be aware, like even in your relationship, when you're mad at your spouse or you're mad at whoever, kind of be aware of how much the shadows are hijacking your ability to connect with them, by what do they say about the other person? How much do they show up and dehumanize the other person so that you don't have to feel like you need to connect with them? So those are just some thoughts that I've been thinking about lately.
Oh, I was even thinking though, while you were talking about, well, the politician says I need to do this for this person. Like you're always trying to be, if you're trying to engage with people to be the person that you think that they want you to be, you're never really you, and you're going to fail at trying to be all these different people to all these different people,
Right. Yeah.
challenging.
Which doesn't work. It sets you up for what they call imposter syndrome. So,
But even what you were talking about earlier too, of like if I'm always holding secrets, like with the disclosure, if I'm always holding secrets, if you really knew who I was, you wouldn't accept me. So then we're automatically believing that we are not lovable to be fully known. And
right.
which of course with addiction is like, I don't want to be that vulnerable. I'm terrified of being that vulnerable. So I'm always going to hold, parts of me away. But that's where real relationship is in those, I'm willing to let you see the flaws and all, and having the love of that and loving you even though you have flaws and
Right.
wrinkles and everything else, that's where where the real meaning is. So
Right.
okay, we have another question. Betrayed partner here. I have been dribbled his disclosures and has suffered for years. I am currently suffering severe tinnitus. What is the likelihood it is caused by trauma I'm experiencing? We have some good. What are some good steps for me to take at this time to recover?
Thank you. I don't know. It's interesting. I just was watching. I don't even know why I was watching yesterday. Well, actually, I do know because I have been having this issue with burping that's been really freaking annoying. And so I saw this little YouTube video about why this guy had issues with burping that just started suddenly and it wouldn't stop. And he went to the doctor and they couldn't figure out why. And none of the medications seemed to be working. And so finally, he ended up running into a social worker who did an assessment with him. And he had all the classic signs of anxiety,
Oh wow.
and that the way that his body was manifesting anxiety was through these burping. So, there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. Peter Levine and his somatic body work is a beautiful work where he absolutely believes that trauma is stored in our bodies. So it is possible that your tinnitus could be a result of that trauma. And that's the way that your body is responding to some of that. Really, the only way to figure that out is to probably go to a therapist who is trained in doing body work and figuring out how to release that. And there are some somatic therapists around the world who've been trained in how to do some of that body work, and it's beautiful work. It's not invasive, it's very soft. And But that might be something that could help you. But if there's not a therapist in your area, you could also look up Peter Levine, Levine, Waking the Tiger. If you go to Amazon, he has several books. One of them is really small. I can't remember the name of it, but he gives like 8 different steps that you can do just on your own that walks you through some of that. And he also has some YouTube videos you can check out. So that might be something that you can explore. We often go to the Western cultural medicine ways of trying to treat some of this stuff, and that doesn't always work. And I know tinnitus can be aggravatingly challenging, and so I'm really sorry that that's something that you suffer with. I had a client once who had that and got special hearing aids that would like make sounds to help reduce some of the tinnitus so that it wasn't as disruptive. So um, trying to be creative about that, but I would imagine that would be something to take a look at. Self-care, meditation, learning how to breathe, some of the basic trauma self-care tools that could be helpful for you as you're working through some of that.
So Harriet Hunter did a journaling on the Wednesday a couple weeks ago. She did, and there she won an award for her book, which came out of her journaling. But there's all kinds of research about how journaling can be healing, and I can't help but think of that. I hear so often from betrayed partners who have some physical manifestation, autoimmune. There is often something because I think it's the chronic post traumatic stress. I mean, it's constant. Your cortisol level is chronically high, waiting for the next one, waiting for the next one. So I love the idea of doing some body work, mindfulness. We talk about that often. Doing mindfulness, grounding. Where are my feet? Where's my breath? All of those type of things, because unfortunately, with the dribble, it is waiting for the next thing. And the details that you heard, which I'm sorry about, I'm sure it was more than what would have been in a formal disclosure. So then that, is flitting around in your brain nonstop too. So, but I'm glad you're here. I validate, the pain is real. Betrayal trauma is real. There are some physical things that you can do, somatic trauma work, etc. But I hope you guys get on a different path. So, okay, next question. We are 2 months past formal disclosure, and husband is in good recovery in SAA with a therapist. Through difficult conversations where his shame was triggered by us talking about our issues, he has realized he needs to use his tools to deal with his shame and be able to stay present. The struggle right now is his comments are so robotic and lacking feeling and empathy when he says, "This must be hard," or "I understand how that must feel." It's almost worse than him avoiding. We are started couples therapy. Should we have these conversations with a therapist present? Waiting a week to talk seems a long time to me.
Thank you. So one of the challenges that addicts really struggle with is empathy, primarily because they've been dealing with so much shame. Brene Brown has taught us that the way to douse or kill empathy is by smothering it with shame. And the opposite is true. The way to like remove shame is to douse it with empathy. So part of what's happened is because of the shame, he doesn't actually really know how he feels. So when we're working with addicts at the very beginning, we hand them like this, we hand them the feelings chart with the faces or whatever, and they're like, I don't know what I'm feeling. So when I'm talking about the core emotions, I narrow it down to the three. Like, are you angry? Are you sad? Or are you afraid? And we'll add joy in there sometimes. But are you angry, if it's sad, or afraid? That's a good start for them, because in order to have empathy, I actually have to go inside and figure out what it is that I'm feeling. Then I have to recall, when was a time that I felt that? What did that feel like in my body? And then use words to describe what that was like. So when he's hearing that it's hard for you, there's still some disconnection going on, and it's not that he can't, but it's that he's having to learn how to do it. Empathy is a skill, just like learning how to play the piano or learning how to throw a football or whatever. It's a skill that we can learn, but it does not come naturally for a lot of us. For some, it comes easier than others, just like any other skill. Some people can pick up a piano and do something really wonderful with it. Others, it takes a lot. Okay, but it's a skill nonetheless. So one of the things that might help is, rather than like focusing on the pain of this thing that he did, tell him a story about a pain that happened to you that's not connected to him. Like something that was painful when you were a kid, and tell him about that. And then have him tell you a story about something that was painful when he was a kid, that maybe has a similar kind of events that happen. So you could even just pick one of the wounds. Like, tell me a time when you felt rejected when you were a kid, or tell me a time when you felt neglected when you were a kid. And you tell a time, and he tells a time. And part of that is also giving information about how you would describe the pain, which is hard to do because it is painful, but it actually makes it a little easier when you're not saying, well, it's tied to what you just did right now. Makes it a little easier because you're able to talk about it from before, because then he's able to like see the pain, and he can probably wrap his head around that and his heart around that a little bit more and say, wow, like I can think of like a little kid having to go through that, and that sounds really, really painful. Then what he needs to do, like, and this is what a therapist can help him with, but like this is the process, as he's hearing your story, he's thinking to himself, okay, well, so you're talking about rejection, and it felt like this dagger was stabbed into your heart and twisted like 3 times. When was the time that I felt rejected? Okay, I remember that it was like the time that I was picked last on the sports team, and I felt a lot of shame, and there's this heaviness, and I felt really sad, and I wanted to run away, and I wanted to cry. Okay, that's what it felt like. So then I look at you and I say, so did it feel like you were like this really heaviness and you wanted to run away and you wanted to cry? Now, I didn't tell you the story that's evoking inside of me. I'm just asking, is this what it feels like for you? And you're like, yes, that's totally what it felt like. Well, because I had a story and I could connect. I'm like, oh my gosh, now I can connect with that. That sounds really awful. I'm so sorry that that happened to you. That's empathy. So it requires me to go inside, connect with my painful experience, share it as if it might be your painful experience with questions like, is this what it's like? And if I got it wrong, you'll say no, but it was like this. And I'm like, okay, I think I got it. And now we can build on that, as if that makes sense. So I would imagine that when you're trying to tell him and he's flat affect, I'm so sorry that happened to you. That sounds really painful. That's total like abandonment or neglect, even though he's standing right there, and it doesn't feel good. It's like, I'd rather just not tell you. I totally get that. Part of that is he has some learning still to do, and if you want to help him, one of the things is ask him about a painful experience of his life that doesn't involve you. See if he can tap into that a little bit and start practicing a little bit of naming those emotions. What do they feel like? Where did you feel them? How would you describe that to another person? And see if that helps him broaden his vocabulary and his emotional intelligence enough so he actually can be emotionally responsive.
That is so true, and it does sound robotic, but exactly what Troy was saying. You're completely disconnected from all emotions. So, it is a learning curve. The good news is he's at least saying the words. That's progress. Many, if you're avoidant, you just leave. So that he's holding the space and trying. That gives hope. But I hope you. Use some of the Troy suggestions. Somebody put in the comment, and they put just a panelist. So tinnitus is a symptom of many disorders, and anxiety is a possibility. Always good to get your ears checked out by a medical professional, as tinnitus has many origins in the body. So when trying to hold space for my partner's pain, I'm often tripped up by their use of extreme descriptions, e.g., gang rape, molestation, etc., to communicate their pain. It is useful to take these descriptions as a barometer of my partner's pain. Oh, is it useful to take these descriptions as a barometer of my partner's pain? Or might they have unintentional effect of overshadowing the way real pain that my acting out behaviors, lies, secrecy, gaslighting have caused?
They're trying to explain to you with the most vivid descriptions they possibly can use about how painful this is. The challenge is that shame might be preventing you from hearing it. So if they're using saying it felt like I was gang raped, your shame may show up and say, well, that's not what I was doing. And so then you want to pull away and get defensive. But if you sat for a moment and just sat with the imagery of what that might be like, the sense of powerlessness, the sense of fear, the sense of not having a voice, not being able to say no, the other words of molestation, like, again, the sense of not being able to say no, the ability of not being able to have a voice, and hearing what's underneath that, and you can connect with that, then you might be able to have some empathy for that. What shame will do, though, is hijack that and make it all about you. And we'll say, well, you suck, you've ruined this, you're a horrible person, you're royal might show up and start getting defensive, your rebel might show up and start getting defensive, but it's making it all about you in that moment, and then you absolutely can't be empathic in that moment. And so there is a lot of real pain that your acting out has caused, and your partner's trying to describe to you what that pain was like in the way that they know how to use it. So rather than kind of like look at the imagery and the emotion that that might be having, and then say, well, how would I want to respond to that? If my partner actually came to me and told me that they were gang raped, or they were molested, or if a child came over and said that to you, how would you want to respond to that if that actually literally happened? And then can you respond that way? Now, I know it's a little different because you feel like, well, it's my fault. That's where the shame hijacks that, saying, wow, that has got to hurt, and I can see how my behavior caused that pain, and for that, here's what I'm wanting to do to change that, so you never have to experience that ever again. But they're doing their best to try and explain to you just how severe the pain is, and so hear it without going into shame. Go into love and compassion instead.
And I had this thought, and I don't know if it's right, but like those are extreme descriptors, and those would not be typical. So I am so fearful that that is something that that person actually experienced. And if that is the case, then I hope and pray that that person is getting trauma support to deal with that very, very, real painful trauma wound. So we are out of time. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Troy, again for another really meaningful. I mean, these questions are great and painful, and I'm so glad you're here and asking the questions. This is how we change. This is how we grow. This is how we connect and how we get support. So again, Troy's got a men's group on Fridays, every Friday morning, free drop-in group, and then the Betrayed Partners is alternating Thursdays. You can find that on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. On the events tab, you'll see the calendar. On the online support, you'll see the list of everything that we have. So keep joining us. We will keep having more great resources for you. This has been recorded. It'll be posted on that website as well, so you can go back and watch it if you missed any details. So thank you, my friend. See you next month.
All right, bye.
Bye.